From the December lower, I'll tell you what, forget December low. In this year, let's look at what India has done and let's look at what US markets have done. So, you know, before we get excited about the fact that, okay, we are doing something special, well, that's not true. Not 52 week. We are looking at from the beginning of the year. That's the YTD change. Dow in 52 week is up 6%. Now, this is the data I want. Dow in this calendar year, which is January, February, March and middle of April, has appreciated by 13.5%. Nifty has appreciated by 7.5%. So Deven Choksey, before we get excited and think that okay, all is going well for Indian markets, I would say what is the big deal? Dow has done 50% better than us.
Yeah, good morning Nikunj. Well, certainly I think our markets have a role to play, particularly after a sharp correction that we have seen in the last year due to the sort of problems that we have faced with some of the typical issues like loan against shares, the pledge shares, and also I think NBFC related issues which are largely confined to our own markets. Of course, the market had to have the corrections and the valuations got moderated. Subsequent to that, I think the additional fund flow which we observed from the month of February in 2019 until date it continues. So I think that is the reason for which our markets have started correcting back into the better valuations. I don't think that the fundamentals of our companies and the economy have changed beyond a point. Of course, I think economy shows distinct character of improvement signs and the potentials along with. But the fact remains that I think the results per se of the companies which we are talking about, they are remaining by and large I think on the predicted lines. So I guess I think it's largely to do with the few positive factors. One of them easily can be counted is I think the flow of money which has come into our market since February this year. Second important thing is that the availability of stocks at a moderated valuations, I think so that is another aspect of it. Third aspect I think which could be easily said is I think the current government likely to come back into power, and that's where I think the continuity factor which market wants I think is being understood. So these are few of the major reasons for which I think we are seeing I think the rally in the market. Along with that, I think we are seeing a stable crude oil prices. We are seeing the better fiscal discipline in the country, and as a result of which I think lower territory as far as the interest rates are concerned, lower inflation is concerned. So all in all put together, yes, it is bringing the confidence back into the market, and that's where we are. Whether we'll scale up the new levels immediately before the election or after the election, anybody's guess. But I feel that stock specific market continues to hold a lot of promises. Well, I think do agree with the fundamentals of the company. They were always there and they continue to be there. Passenger vehicle portfolio reasonably performing well. Commercial vehicle portfolio has a better prospects as well. However, the pertinent questions pertaining to I think who is buying Tata Motors, my own sense is there are two players I think who are basically accumulating the stock. On one side, if I do understand correctly, I think it's a group which is basically through their holding company is buying the stock at lower levels. And not surprising though for me, because I think the last quarter results I think which was full of impairment etc., which is one time in nature. I guess I think the situations cannot be as bad as was projected I think in the last quarter's result. So probably I think that's the reason for which at lower levels their accumulation process started. The second player I think who is basically accumulating the stock, and which my understanding is are the ETFs I think who are basically putting money on a contra buy basis ahead of elections. So stocks would differ from one to another from a given point of time, but the fact is that I think the allocation of money is happening from their side too, and that's the reason for which I think we are seeing the stock price going up. I am still maintain that the fundamentals of Tata Motors are likely to improve going forward, also because of the fact that the commercial vehicle portfolio is likely to show relatively better performance from 2020 onwards, and that's where I think one could possibly argue for volume as well as value related growth coming into this particular portfolio. So we remain positive on this stock from some time now, and I guess I think the market is rewarding it at this point of time.
Deven, would you be kind of readjusting the mix of themes in your portfolio currently? We've seen a resurgence of interest in, for example, infrastructure, real estate, infrastructure particularly in sync with election season, but there's a different segment of the market of the cyclicals are starting to move. Would you be taking a renewed interest there?
No, we are actually I think more careful about I think the selection of stocks in our portfolio. We believe that the consumption story will continue to position well, and that is where I think the companies which are likely to be part of discretionary, non-discretionary space of consumption, I think would be the ones would be our choice. We continue to put our bet on few of the areas where we feel largely more comfortable. We feel insurance, one among them, is going to be a product, financial product, which will be consumed well going forward as well. So I think that is one area where we feel more comfortable. Some of the corporate banks with their portfolio on the credit lending side, particularly I think likes of Kotak, where we believe that I think they are ripe for some kind of a monetization of the verticals that they have built in the company so far. So next 2 years, I think we have an outlook on this company where we feel that I think the company would probably take the advantage of financialization of the verticals that they have built. So this is one area. We also believe that I think the commercial vehicle in particular, and exceptions like Bajaj Auto within the two-wheeler space, three-wheeler space, would continue to perform well in the portfolios. Likes of Ashok Leyland, likes of Tata Motors, I think are the ones I think where we are relatively more convinced about from the investment point of view. So yes, our approach would be I think pure stock specific. I think though we will keep the direction on, but at the same time I think our approach would be selecting individual stocks in the portfolio vis-a-vis buying the cyclicals. I think we would stay with I think growth and the value stories.
On to Starlight. Deven, Starlight Tech, I mean, it's been a complete, rundown on the stock. Of 400 rupee stock has become sub 200.
Yes, Nikunj, I think sometimes I think such situations do happen in our market wherein I think the reactions takes place in hurry. Many of the analysts probably I think thought that the Starlight technology would be affected maximum because of the commodity issues related to the fiber optics. However, I think very few realizes the fact that I think they have the order book which is filled up for next 3 years. The value is already determined. At the same time, I think they do the value addition, as a result of which I think their profit margins are relatively better compared to the commodity fiber. Unfortunately, I think the research report gets circulated into the market, and I think the reactions happen in the marketplace. To me, I think the valuations have corrected at 200 odd level price, and that's where I think one could possibly argue for adding the stock back into the portfolio. Though unfortunate it is that I think it is having a very sharp volatility from 400 to 200. Earlier period of the volatility was contributed largely by the pledge of shares by the promoters. Today the volatility is being contributed by the view on the fiber commodity, as a result of which I think their optic fiber commodity, as a result of which I think the stock price had a rundown. But in my viewpoint, I think fundamentals remain intact, and I believe that I think for next 2 to 3 years the visibility with 10,000 crore worth of execution I think still stays. So certainly it's a buy opportunity at lower levels. Close to 200, it's an attractive one. Below that, I think it would be far better.
Deven, just wanted your sense in Polycab. It's going to debut on the street today. Given the kind of high subscription that we've seen both in the HNI as well as the total category, can one expect a big listing pop?
Well, I think from the perspective of looking at the peers within the space, likes of Havells, likes of Phenolics, and comparing the company at a listed at an offer price, probably you find that there is a little bit of headroom available compared to what their peers are quoting it. Whether I think it should immediately translate into the price action on a same day or maybe I think in few days, again I think I would leave it to the market to determine. But my own take is that yes, they have a role to play, largely because I think the few players are there and they are commanding the premium. Additional player with a good amount of growth, particularly Polycab, has been I think showing the reasonably higher amount of growth in last 2 to 3 years, both consistently at the top line and maybe on the bottom line at a relatively higher levels compared to the peers. So certainly from that perspective, allocation of money should happen into this particular stock. We have seen IPO actions already where the allocations have happened. Quite possible, I think post listing, I think you might see little bit follow-up action where I think they may want to fill up the portfolio with the gaps that they may have. So certainly I see a possibility on positive side as far as the stock is concerned. Maybe if it runs up too fast and too soon, probably I think it will have a waiting period. So I think I would like to wait and see how the listing takes place.
All right, a thumbs up there for Polycab.
Deven Choksey, would you concur with the views of some of the brightest minds on D Street? Is Metropolis something that intrigues you too?
Well, certainly, I think I have not, got the recommendation on this company, so I can talk anything on the valuation side. But from the business point of view, I find that anybody who is in the business of basically, acquiring the customer and the prospects, probably they should be given a good amount of a look for sure. Here is one particular area of business, where you are accessing the customer in a different manner. Where exactly you would utilize and cross sell, that is something which one will have to figure it out. But yes, from perspective of a core business, where they are probably going with a larger amount of strength and the franchises, I guess there is in a good amount of continuity which is being seen in this particular activity, where the healthcare remains in the prime focus for most of the citizens. So from that perspective, I would think that there will be a continuity assured as far as the business is concerned, the growth is concerned, and would be less of a cyclical in nature. So that is one good thing which I find in this particular kind of a business. But as I said that I have not looked at the company in particular, unable to talk about the revenue or the valuations per se at this point of time.
We've not spoken about, well, Nestle, we got this exclusive bit of news, got feedback from various shareholders on resolution related to royalty payment. We do not want to do something which would be considered as negative for minority shareholders. We've modified resolution on royalty payment post the feedback. Deven Choksey, Nestle is saying that, look, we don't want to follow anything disruptive when it comes to royalty payment. MNCs in the past have misused the royalty payment route. The fact that Nestle has modified the resolution on royalty payment post feedback, is that going to re-rate the stock in the short term?
Well, I think probably the stock is already valued, and valued very handsomely, very richly. So I don't think that this particular factor could possibly result into a massive re-rating. Maybe a symbolic gesture on some uptick in the price. That may be a given kind of a situation. But I don't think that you are asking for a major re-rating on this particular companies. Neither I would think that it is basically going to make any difference as far as valuation is concerned. It may add into the bottom line performance to a certain extent, but whether it will change valuation metrics dramatically, I am not in favor of that. So probably the stock is adequately valued, fully valued, richly valued, as you may want to call it as. Maybe some corrective downside as and when it happens, one could look at it, but otherwise no, I am not the one who will ask for major re-rating on this stock.